Welcome to Bonnie's Beat. I'm your host, Bonnie Squires. We're coming to you from Radnor Studio 21, mainline television, in the heart of beautiful downtown Wayne. We like to interview people who are doing interesting and worthwhile things in the community. And today, I talked Steve Mendelson, Esquire, because he is an attorney, even though he doesn't want me to mention the ESQ, period. He's here today with a different hat on than he usually wears. He's here as an author of a book called Shallow Draughts, Faith in the Absence of Free Will. I have no clue. I read it, and I'm just as lost as I was before I read it, but that's why I have Steve here today, so we will find out. Okay, Steve Mendelson, what on earth possessed you and this book you've been writing for how many decades?
4.
40 years you're pot skiing with writing this book? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I started thinking about the ideas that are in this book when I was a junior at college. And I had a housemate who was a philosophy major. I was a physics major. And Dan made the outrageous claim one day that he could do better in an upper-level physics class than I could do in an upper-level philosophy class. And I said, that's ridiculous. You need to take lower-level physics classes, math classes, before you can have any prayer of getting through an upper-level physics class. Philosophy is half BS. I've been BSing my whole life.
So Do not take my initials in vain.
I accepted his challenge. So I enrolled in an upper-level philosophy class with him, where not only was I the only student in the class who had never had a philosophy class before, I was the only student in the class who wasn't a philosophy major. So I took this class, and it started me thinking about beliefs. And I've been thinking about beliefs for 40 years, more than 40 years now. And about 5 years or so ago, I had the idea of writing a book about my ideas about beliefs. And then I picked up a book by Sam Harris, one of my heroes, who wrote a book called Free Will, in which he wrote everything I was going to write in my book. And I was very depressed because he said everything I was going to say and then some. And then a few months later, I was reading Seawolf by Jack London. And in
that
there,
I've read.
You've read that?
None of those other people you mentioned have I ever read anything by them.
Oh, you should read Sam Harris. Sam Harris is great. But Jack London wrote Seawolf, and in Seawolf, the captain goes on this tirade about free will. And he's basically said everything that Sam Harris repeated 100 years later. So I figured if Sam Harris could write his book after Jack London already said everything he said, I could write my book. So that's when I started sitting down in earnest to put together this book, Shallow Draughts, about not just beliefs, but also free will.
What do you define free will as being?
Good. So to me, free will is the conscious control of behavior, conscious control of our actions, right? That there are lots of things that we do automatically. My heart beats automatically.
We breathe.
We breathe automatically.
Food gets digested.
But we think that there are certain activities like deciding what to eat for dinner, or what college to go to, or whether to turn left or turn right at the next intersection. We think of those activities as being the result of the exercise of conscious control of our behavior. And to me, that's what free will is. I don't believe that we have free will.
Well, that's what I was going to say when I read your book. After you go through this whole setup, you say, but I don't believe there's such a thing as free will. Everything is predetermined.
Not necessarily predetermined. Okay, the opposite of free will is not necessarily predestination, right? Randomness is not free will, and randomness wouldn't be predestination. So predestination, determinism is a flavor of the opposite or the absence of free will, but it's not the only possible absence of free will. In fact, I believe that we have, for the most part, predictability with some randomness thrown in.
Now, you're a special kind of attorney. right?
Yes,
Tell us what kind of specialty work you do.
I'm a patent attorney. So I help people protect their inventions by helping them through the process of getting a patent from the U.S. government. But that has nothing to do with any of this.
I know, but how does the absence of free will factor into your dealing with your clients?
Well, it factors into all my dealings in life, right? I realize that my consciousness is a product of my brain, right? My brain generates my consciousness. What's consciousness? Consciousness is self-awareness, awareness that I exist. When Rene Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am," what he was saying is, I have thoughts. My brain generates thoughts, therefore I know that I exist. There's something that exists that has those thoughts. And to me, what exists is my brain. My brain generates my consciousness. My consciousness is aware of other outputs of my brain, such as my thoughts and my actions. And so when I say that I don't have free will, what I mean is that my consciousness, my awareness of my behavior, is a passive observer of the products of my brain. And again, my consciousness is just one product of my brain. Other thoughts, beliefs, emotions, actions are all the result and product of my brain. My brain is just an organ, like my heart that pumps blood, and my liver that filters blood, and my pancreas that does whatever pancreases do. Who knows what pancreases do? But my brain is an organ that operates according to science and real world electrochemical, physical processes. And the function of the brain is to generate thoughts and actions. And the brain is chugging along just like my heart is chugging along and my liver is chugging along, and it operates according to science and produces thoughts and actions. And one of the types of thoughts that my brain generates is consciousness, but it's not my consciousness that's controlling my brain. My consciousness is a product of my brain and is sitting there at most observing what's going on, that awareness. So if my consciousness is not controlling my brain is dictating all of its products, that's not free will.
Do Jack London and this Sam Harris, whoever he is, they agree with you?
Yeah, I agree with them.
Did you make up the word theist? You've got a lot of chapters about theists, atheists, agnostics, but I never saw the word theist in print before. Did you make that up?
No. So atheist is someone who believes that God does not exist. Being the absence of theism, belief in God. And a theist is someone who believes that God does exist.
I've never seen theist in print anywhere,
Okay.
except in your book.
Well,
it
okay.
must be in all of your philosophy books. I don't read philosophy books, right?
Well, now you do.
Okay. Who's your favorite philosopher? You mentioned a lot of them in Shallow Draughts.
Yeah. Well, Sam Harris, I guess, counts as a philosopher, so I give him my nod.
Yeah, but you mentioned Kant, and I heard of all these guys.
Kant I never understood a word of.
Oh,
so
okay.
He can't be my favorite. But I like Berkeley and Hume. I don't remember what they said, but I remember liking them when I took that class 40 years ago, because they also had particular views about beliefs and how we need to be skeptical about beliefs because we're often wrong.
What kind of degree did you get? First of all, where'd you go to college?
So I went to the University of Michigan, studied physics there.
Where did you grow up?
Reading, Pennsylvania.
My condolences.
I'll be there Saturday for a high school reunion.
I hope nobody shows up wearing a Nazi shirt.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping Jim.
They might.
They might. In Reading, in my neighborhood, they might.
Yeah.
So I graduated from the University of Michigan with a bachelor's degree in physics. I came here to Penn to study electrical engineering, got a master's degree in electrical engineering. Then I went to work at GE Aerospace in Valley Forge, King of Prussia, when GE had an aerospace.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's Lockheed Martin, but it was GE back then. And I worked in the satellite industry for 6 years. And then I went back to law school to do something different. And ended up doing patent law because it combined engineering and law. Not necessarily why I went to law school, but made sense to give it a try, and I've enjoyed it. So
It's interesting because Steve and I, the way I met him, we both are board members of the Anti-Defamation League, and we're both involved with the Black Jewish Alliance of the Anti-Defamation League, ADL. But when you have lunch at a meeting and you sit in a board meeting with a colleague, you don't know anything about their background. I mean, I knew he was a lawyer and that he was a patent attorney, but I didn't know anything. I didn't know that you studied physics initially. I can't imagine you studying physics.
okay.
I mean, you're such a humanist, and to me, a guy who studies physics is the opposite end of the spectrum, right?
It's a circle.
Oh, okay. By you, it's a circle. All right. By me, it's opposite ends. What can I tell you? That very interesting. So you became a patent attorney, and you combined your physics. I'll tell you, I don't know anything about physics. If I had to take calculus when I went to Lower Merion, I would still be in high school. I would never have survived having to take calculus. I barely got through. I mean, the A's in geometry and what was the other algebra? They were my weakest A's, and I had no clue. And and I remember in chemistry class asking Mr. Whistler, where does the color go when you add this chemical and this chemical? And he would turn red and puff up, and he could never tell me where the color went,
That's a good question.
So anyway, so I did not pursue a career in physics or biology or anything else.
It's never too late.
Well, let me tell you, I did enjoy my freshman biology course at Penn. And when I met with the dean of the School of Education where I was enrolled at Penn, and I went to pick my courses for the next semester, I said, I think I'll take zoology. And she said to me, are you a pre-med major? I said, no, I'm an English major. She screamed at me, you'll wreck your average, you can't take zoology. So I could have been a brain surgeon, who knows?
Well, let me tell you the rest of my story about,
Okay.
about the philosophy class that I took. So I took the philosophy class with Dan, my housemate, who was the philosophy major, and he did a little bit better than I did, but that wasn't our bet. Our bet was that he would do better in a physics class. So I said, okay, now it's time to take the upper level physics class with me. Let's take statistical thermodynamics.
Oh, God.
And he said,
Whatever
well,
that is.
that's when he wimped out of the bet. We ended up taking Astronomy 101 together as a compromise. So I let him off the hook.
How did you do in astronomy?
We both got A's in Astronomy 101.
Wow.
101.
But how did you do in the philosophy courses?
So I got a B minus.
Ouch.
My lowest grade in college, and Dan got a B. He was sweating it out, so I was a little close, a little dicey there. But it was an interesting class, and got me thinking about beliefs.
You're Jewish.
Yeah,
I know that.
it's true.
But how would you define your Jewish belief system?
I'm a devout atheist. And
Oh, devout.
Devout.
Okay.
I'm a devout atheist. It's a belief, just like theism is a belief, atheism is a belief. And an
Were you
ardent-
bar mitzvahed?
Oh yeah, I'm
So-
doing the Haftarah on Saturday at Har Zion.
So how did you come to the decision that you're a non-believer?
So again, this is part of the story. I didn't come to the decision. My brain generated that decision, right? It's all part of this absence of free will thing, okay? We don't choose our beliefs. That was my initial thinking about this. I wrote a paper for that philosophy class way back when, which I described a situation where it's a I go outside on a foggy morning and I see an animal off in the distance, and it has the appearance of a fox. So I believe that it's a fox. As I walk closer to the animal, the fog starts to lift, and characteristics that were more fox-like change, and it now has characteristics that appear more dog-like, and at some point my belief changes that from it being a fox to now I believe that it's a dog. But I didn't consciously control that process. I didn't consciously control the initial belief that it was a fox. That happened automatically and involuntarily. And when my belief changed from fox to dog, that change also happened automatically and involuntarily. I didn't consciously control that process. And that's what started me thinking about beliefs way back then, and the fact that we don't control our beliefs. And if we don't...
You say we don't control our beliefs.
Right. I do.
I don't have to agree with that, do I?
You don't have to agree. You could be wrong. It's okay. You don't have to agree. But if we don't control our beliefs, and if we act according to our beliefs, then doesn't that mean that we don't control our actions? And that's where I had gotten to this free will stuff. And I said, no. We can't go there. We have to pretend, even if we don't have free will, for the sake of a civil operating society, we have to pretend that we have free will. Then I read Sam Harris, and he said, no, we don't have to pretend. And I think he's right. I'm convinced that we can live productive lives and civil lives in the absence of free will.
Just because everything is not predetermined does not mean that we humans have free will. Quantum mechanics does not imply or even support the existence of free will. Well, suppose I don't believe in quantum mechanics. I don't even know what quantum mechanics is.
You want me to tell you?
Yeah.
So quantum mechanics says that at the microscopic level, things are somewhat random. Okay, we're talking about at the atomic level. We're talking about electrons and protons, okay? Things are somewhat random at that level. And that randomness has manifestations in our macro world, but the point is that unlike Newton, who believed that if you had absolute knowledge of the position and momentum of all particles in the universe, you could predict the future with absolute certainty. And in fact, you could even determine the past with absolute certainty based on Newtonian mechanics. But Einstein and his compatriots who came up with quantum mechanics realized that that wasn't completely accurate. At our macroscopic level, it's essentially true, what Newton thought, but at the microscopic level, that's where it breaks down. And you don't have absolute certainty, you don't have absolute predictability. In fact, you might have heard of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle.
I never. I swear I never heard of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle.
So Heisenberg said you can't know the position and momentum of a particle with absolute certainty. The more you know its position, the less you know its momentum. The more you know its momentum, the less you know its position. So there's an inherent uncertainty in our reality. And what people do is they say, quantum mechanics, that's evidence of free will. But to me, that's silly, because quantum mechanics at its heart is randomness. And as I said before, randomness is not a characteristic of free will. Randomness is a characteristic of the absence of free will. If something is random, it can hardly be thought to be the result of some conscious control.
So you're a bar mitzvah boy.
Yeah.
And you never heard of quantum mechanics, I assume, when you were a bar mitzvah.
When I was 13, that's true.
So how did you get from there to here?
Physics and philosophy.
So don't let your kids take physics and philosophy if you want them to turn out to be, I don't know what.
Yeah, what? Happy?
How does this impact your daily life? Like when you go to the supermarket.
Yeah.
How does it impact on what you pick to buy for your family?
Well, I realized that if I want oranges instead of apples, that preference, that desire, that happened automatically. I didn't control the process. Sam Harris talks about having tea or coffee, in the morning when he wakes up. Sometimes he has tea, sometimes he has coffee. He realizes that when he wants coffee, that's the result of some automatic, involuntary process, the absence of free will, the dictates of his functioning brain that happened to generate a desire for, what did I say, tea or coffee?
Coffee
that day, and another day it's tea. So I realized that the choices that I make in life, and we have terms in our language that are loaded terms. We talk about choice and selection.
Why are they loaded?
Because they imply consciousness. We don't talk about a gumball machine choosing which gumball to spit out next. But we do talk about choosing whether to have tea or coffee, okay? And so it's a loaded term because it implies the existence of free will. So we have to be careful when we talk about, because I think of my brain as a gumball machine that spits out ideas and thoughts like a gumball machine spits out gumballs. People think, oh, gumball machines spit out gumballs randomly. That's not true. If you knew the position of the gumballs in the gumball machine and the mechanism that dispenses those gumballs one at a time, you'd be able to predict with some high degree of certainty which color gumball would come out next. And that's what my brain
Could you
is.
make money doing that?
Maybe, no doubt. But so in my daily life, I realize, first of all, that as thoughts come into my mind, that's just a random process. Not a random process, but it's an automatic process. So it's not random. There are reasons why I have thoughts, and there are reasons why I have actions. They're based on my genetics and my history. My genetics and my history have produced the me, the I that exists today. That's constantly changing. My genetics don't change, but my history continues to change. So my thoughts and my behavior can change over time as my brain evolves.
Did you self-publish?
I did. It's a beautiful thing. Amazon.com.
Okay.
You can self-publish and for free. It's a beautiful thing.
Where can people get, if they're interested,
Yeah.
where can they get copies of Shallow Draughts?
Amazon.com.
Okay. Where's the picture from?
Amazon.com. They have a whole library of free photos that you can use.
But why did you pick these two rusty boats?
It's a pun.
Okay, I give up.
These are rowboats. Rowboats have a shallow draft, D-R-A-F-T. They don't sink into the water much.
Oh.
They kind of ride on the top of the water as opposed to like a sailboat with a long keel that has a deep draft. Rowboats have shallow drafts.
But this draft is a different draft, D-R-A-U-G-H-T-S.
This draft is from, you know the expression, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing?
Yes.
So that comes from Alexander Pope. His
I know
essay on
Pope,
criticism.
because he was also a poet, so I know Pope.
Well, this is a poem. His essay on criticism, it starts out, a little learning is a dangerous thing. So the expression, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, is an incorrect quotation from Pope. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring. The Pierian spring was the fountain of knowledge in Greek mythology. So it says, drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring. There, shallow drafts, little sips, shallow drafts intoxicate the brain, and drinking largely sobers us again. So little knowledge is a dangerous thing. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Better to drink deeply than to just have shallow drafts. But I'm hedging my bets. So my book is Shallow Drafts, little sips of knowledge.
What does your wife say about this?
Oh, she doesn't believe any of it. She hasn't read the whole thing yet either, but and the subtitle is a double entendre.
Faith in the absence of free will.
Faith in the absence of free will. So it has two meanings. I have faith, even though I don't have free will, but I also have faith that I don't have free will. And faith is what's the focus of the first half of the book, beliefs and faith.
And theists and atheists and agnostics and so on.
Yes, and those are what we would call religious beliefs, but we also have secular beliefs. And I believe that the same psychological process by which we come to have religious beliefs is the same psychological process by which we have secular beliefs. And that psychological process I call automatic, involuntary, subjective, because everybody's brain functions differently, automatic, involuntary, subjective evidence weighing. Our brain takes in evidence and it weighs it subjectively, assigns different probative weights, values to different pieces of evidence, and spits out beliefs. And that process, automatic, involuntary, subjective evidence weighing, is just another name for faith. That's what faith is. Faith is what takes us from evidence to conclusion, evidence to belief. When we talk about a leap of faith, we're going from something short of proof, but evidence suggesting, and then the conclusion. And that psychological process of spanning that gap from evidence to conclusion is faith.
We've come to the conclusion of our show. Thank you so much, Steve. My head is swimming. All right, we'll see everybody next week.